Welcome to another exciting and elucidating episode of the OmniTalk Ask an Expert series. I'm your host, Chris Walton.
And I'm Mezzenga.
And we are the founders of OmniTalk, the fast-growing retail media outlet that is all about the companies, the people, and the technologies that are coming together to shape the future of retail. And, you know, not one, but literally, I think our favorite thing at OmniTalk to do together is to talk about the future. I mean, after all, we met designing Target's store of the future.
Yes.
Our work here at OmniTalk is literally inspired from that work when we met. And so it is with great pleasure that we introduce today's expert, Ryan Petersen, the CEO of Flexport. Ryan is here to give his expert opinion on what the commerce supply chain of the future could and just might look like. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
We are really excited to have you, Ryan, and that's Petersen with an EN at the end. We have to make sure that as people are joining us today, that they know where to find you. And most importantly, for all of those who are joining us live in LinkedIn right now, just a reminder that you can put your questions for the Flexport team, for Ryan, right in the chat to the right of your screen, and we'll take those throughout the conversation. But Ryan, let's kick it off with this. I mean, Flexport has been in the news quite a bit lately. We've even covered that on our Fast Five. Maybe start with giving our audience a little bit of the origin story behind Flexport and kind of everything that's happened since, if you don't mind.
Oh, well, we'll use the entire 30 minutes if I have to tell you everything.
Yeah, right.
And some, but,
let's do the condensed version. The condensed version, yes.
So Flexport is a platform for global logistics. We make it easy to ship cargo anywhere in the world and do all of the complex coordination involved in doing that, which includes passing orders out to your factories and then tying those orders to the shipments, booking them on the best contract that works for your business, the lowest cost or the fastest transit time or some balance therein that gets the cargo where it needs to be, routing that into fulfillment centers. We operate our own network of fulfillment centers and then doing omni-channel distribution out to retail stores or direct to consumer stores. So that's what we've evolved into. And we still continue to expand and take on new geographies and layering in new products like inventory financing, cargo insurance, many other things. But the origin of the business actually goes way back 20 years ago. I ran a business with my older brother, an e-commerce business, buying products in Asia, mostly in Asia, other parts of the world too, building e-commerce sites and selling them online. And we were some of the first, we were kind of like power sellers on eBay, some of the first sellers on Amazon when they opened the third-party marketplace. And then a lot of our own e-commerce sites. It was before Shopify. We were a tech company, even though we never called ourselves that and never raised venture capital, but built all our own e-commerce sites, checkout payments, inventory management. If we'd been smarter, we would have sold the software like Shopify or NetSuite or somebody. Instead, we sold kind of crappy motorsports products, scooters, dirt bikes, ATVs.
I was wondering. I was like, are we talking about action figures? Like, what are you trading cards?
The thing that they all had in common in hindsight was they were like big and bulky, and that's where
that makes sense.
Shipping being a major pain point because it was a big piece of the costs and the customs. A lot of it were motorized vehicles, so there was a heavy regulations of import and export. Import regs, kind of like you got to clear DOT, not just Customs and Border Protection, but DOT, EPA, California certifications around emissions. I mean, you had to deal with it all. And in fact, in the U.S., there's 43 government agencies just in the United States that take an interest in imported products of one kind or another for good reason, right? I mean, they got to protect our people against that, and that's to say nothing of counterfeit and drugs and all the other reasons that border security is important. And so the original idea came from that. It was like I suffered at the hands of freight forwarders and customs brokers who couldn't tell me where my stuff was or how much it was going to cost, much less like provide any kind of data layer or ease of navigation and be able to coordinate this complexity. There's really high transaction costs in the business because there's so many handoffs from door to door on the freight, and they're largely done manually. I sometimes joke that instead of freight forwarding, we should call the industry freight email forwarding. And so what we set out to do with Flexport was build in the beginning, it was sort of like TurboTax for importing. Can we just simplify this process? Almost like, I mean, TurboTax is literally paying your taxes. And so is customs. You got to pay your duties, your taxes on customs, and make that really simple. Where in the beginning it was about small business. We still think we still aspire to be the best way for small business to import things. I think we've done that, but we've really worked up market. Turns out big companies also have these problems.
Yeah.
And the bigger you get, it's a different kind of problem. It's less like, hey, I don't understand these regulations, like teach it to me. It's more, I've got 10,000 shipments that I need to manage and I can't do it by hand. I can't. So it's different kind of problem, but ultimately it's about coordinating complexity, simplifying the world, lowering transaction costs, and helping these supply chains run more efficiently with less working capital, the inventory getting to the right place at the right time at a lower cost.
Yeah, right. And yeah, and imagine, e-commerce is added to that complexity for a lot of those large major companies too. So I want to get back to something you said too. So it sounds like you guys, you have your fingers in a lot of pies then. So there's like the software side of it. You said you run your own logistics centers. And I know you've talked in the past too about being an end-to-end provider. What does end-to-end mean, and why does that concept matter in this discussion?
Yeah, it's really for us about running that full loop from when you place orders out to your factories, your purchase orders going out through our system of order management, and then end to end, all the way from that factory floor to the customer's door or into retail store networks. And really being able to, there's an area where for each leg of that shipment, there's an opportunity for us to differentiate using technology to automate processes, provide better options of routing, make things more efficient, either lowering costs or improving the user experience at every leg. And then there's also, but it's not just tech. And that's one of the reasons this hasn't been done before.
Right.
And that it's hard is, if you could just, there are no APIs from all these companies for you to connect to. There's very few. There's some that we're starting to change that. You're starting to see some development, but largely you have to build integrations to these layers, or sometimes you have to build full user interfaces for your vendors, for these trucking companies or warehouses or other freight forwarders that are coordinating stuff, customs brokers in areas where we don't have our own offices. We're able to cover the entire world in that way. And so you've got to be able to do things that aren't just tech. And if there's no tech, you have to have a human that we're okay to forward an email or pick up the phone and make phone calls and engage with the world. So you need to have great people, tech, and infrastructure. Like assets really matter. We try to not to own them, but you need to connect to them. Assets meaning planes, trucks, warehouses, trains, the whole thing, ports. And the ideal business model is you got to know you own no assets, right? Obviously they're expensive and they don't generate huge returns like venture capitalists want to see, but they really matter. And so how can you get control over those assets, or at least access to them without having to own them, is the name of the game in sort of asset light end-to-end logistics coordination.
So Ryan, explain, even more, I would say top level, like what would you say then that Flexport is trying to build, and what's kind of the value proposition, as we have many people on this call today who are really trying to understand like how to future ready their businesses?
Yeah. And so ultimately what we're trying to do is allow companies to run their business with less working capital, because you've got better coordination between supply and demand in your business. And it's very hard to know how much inventory should you buy. Because we are the order management platform for many of our customers, you're placing orders through here. We then, for each, the factory comes in, the vendor, the supplier of the goods becomes a user. They place bookings to move the cargo by air and ocean transport. We've got great rates for both air and ocean freight, but you're also getting this scorecarding, this ability to know, okay, who's compliant? Like, are they on time? When they place that booking, you now know the lead time of production.
Okay.
And then we are the best source of data on transit time, of course, because we're picking the goods up and delivering them. And so we can get you really accurate data on the full supply side. How long is it taking you to get goods from when you order them to when they come in? That is very helpful for brands figuring out how many units to order, when should I order them? And then we're a great execution layer to actually make sure that those transit times are fast, the prices are affordable, and really have like a one-stop shop for all of the services you need. Now, you don't have to buy everything from Flexport. All these things are modular. You can just use ocean freight or just air freight or just customs. But but they're all much better when you bundle them and can go fully, that's the end-to-end piece, fully door to door, because the more you do on platform, the more data that we're able to help you organize and present back to you, the fewer handoffs there are, because it's all us lowering costs, and we give that back to customers. We're now the third largest ocean freight forwarder in the United States, similar on air, third or fourth.
Okay.
And as we get bigger and bigger, our costs come down, we purchase better, and that helps spin the flywheel further as we lower our prices for our customers.
Okay, Ryan. So let's get into the meat of the discussion. Let's get into why everyone's here, and I said this on the LinkedIn event page. I can't think of anyone better to provide his expertise on what the future supply chain for commerce looks like. And so Ann and I tried to come up with a unique way to have this discussion, this conversation. And what we settled on for our approach is to ask you for your thoughts on where the future of supply chains are headed based on characteristic or trends people typically associate with commerce, all under the guise of what is or is not true about the future. Or said another way, where would you place your bets, Ryan? That's what we want to know. Where would you place your bets and on what? So let's start with an easy one first. Let's go with speed. How will supply chains continue to get products to people faster? What will we see change in that regard?
I don't have a lot of predictions around the speed of the boats and the planes.
Okay, cool.
I don't know.
They're not gonna suddenly go a lot faster.
Well, they go slower now than they did 20 years
right.
ago, as they try to save money on fuel. So, but there's a huge number of handoffs. I mean, an air freight shipment in like a good state, like high quality delivery of air freight from factory to warehouse, like 5 days. But we all know the planes can't fly for 5 days in the air. And there's a lot of handoffs that have to happen, a lot of coordination. And so I think that the more tech takes hold, the more you can improve the turn times on those and tighten. So you can actually improve transit time, even though the ships go the same speed. And that's where a great platform like Flexport, a great freight forwarder in general, can help you find better options. There are more express routings. There are faster ships on ocean. And a lot of times it's not so much that the boat goes faster, but it makes fewer stops. So the more data you have at your fingertips to make these decisions, the better you can do routing. By the way, a customer might prefer to go slower if they can save money. So you'll also just have more choice in this as you present those options. And then the speed to the final customer delivery is really about how do you position the inventory so that you can cut the amount of distance, so that you have forward deployed small caches of inventory everywhere is better than a single DC in the middle of the country trying to serve everybody. If you can get the working capital model to work out, because you're duplicating inventory stores. So that's where I think data can help a lot too, is figuring out, okay, for some of your SKUs, you want to distribute inventory into more locations for the ones that are really selling a lot. For others, you don't have enough, you're not selling enough to justify duplicating the inventory. I think that's where data and speed come together. It's not so much like, I don't really have predictions. I've seen some people pitching like, oh, we're going to make this like hydrofoil container ship or whatever, but I'm a real skeptic on.
So you want to place your bet on the hydrofoil. That's good to know. That's good to know. I do want to press you a little bit though. So because we've got a lot of executives on this webinar and some really big ones, some high level people that have registered to hear what you have to say. If you were to give them advice on the one easy way that they could look to improve the speed of their supply chain, what would it be? Do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, I think, again, it's not always that faster is better. You're looking for some kind of optimization, and it really does depend on per SKU, whether you want to go faster or slower.
So per SKU look, you should do that first and foremost.
And the more you can break this down by which SKUs do you really need on time. One of the best ways to save money, and it's related, is to make sure your containers are fully utilized, like actually loaded all the way up. We look across our data of something like 500,000 containers, and they're only about 70% utilized.
Really?
So there's a lot of empty space in there. And what you want to be able to do is go, okay, on a per SKU look, is for this SKU, am I willing to hold it back to wait for it to be full? And if not, let me build a consolidation network so that I can pull cargo from multiple factories, load them in the same container, and get them moving, and potentially ship cargo with other, less than container load freight is very unpopular because it's seen as being really slow. This is where you ship cargo mixed with other customers' cargo. but that doesn't have to be slow. It has been treated as by freight forwarders as this thing where the cargo doesn't sail until the box is full. So it's like really unreliable. No one wants to use it. We've built like a global conveyor belt service where the containers are leaving regardless. And then that makes it attractive for brands that care about speed. Get the cargo moving rather than sit here and wait for a full container to fill up. And that's where algorithms can really help. Like our planning algorithms for loading containers can reduce the number of containers that you ship by 15%.
Right.
For a large scale enterprise where there's enough volume to consolidate across multiple factories rather, and fill those containers all the way up. So that's a great way to save money. But it's a mix of speed, and you need data to do this. You need to be able to configure, okay, for this SKU, I really want it to move as soon as it's ready. This one, I'm willing to hold back to optimize on price.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good transition into the next topic, Ryan, which is availability. And I wonder if you can explain a little bit just how, as supply chains continue to evolve, as people are looking at products by SKU, like you're talking about, how are things evolving to kind of make those products then more available to the end consumer? Is it the visibility that you're talking about, like that they have now that they can kind of act more quickly on, or how is that evolving, or how do you see that evolving?
Yeah, this was the big logic behind our acquisition of Shopify Logistics last year.
Okay.
Flexport traditionally was a freight forwarder. We acquired Shopify Logistics. We also acquired the technology assets and the IP of Convoy, which is a trucking brokerage to get us into domestic trucking. But the Shopify Logistics acquisition, that we have a network of fulfillment centers. There's 5 of them. They're massive, like over 1 million square foot each, so 5.2 million square foot across the network. So really big. It's hard to fathom. These are really big buildings.
Right. Yeah, they're big.
Yeah, really big. And those sites they're strategically positioned so you can cover 85 to 90% of US consumption within a 2-day delivery timeframe without having to pay for express service, just by if you distribute your inventory. Now you need to be large enough to justify that, as I was getting to earlier, at least for the head SKUs, large enough to justify that. But the logic for the acquisition is really tying it back to that order management system that I was describing and allowing you to fulfill, even if one of the sites is out of stock, it should never say out of stock to your customer.
Right.
It should go back, check the API for our order management, get a status, where is this thing on the inbound, and allow you to sell off the water or even something that's still in production. And then in real time show the customer, hey, ships in 1 month, ships in 2 months. We haven't launched that yet, but that's like a big effort internally here to connect these two systems. That was the strategic logic for the acquisition, though, is because now you're able to run a business with way less working capital, capture sales that you might have lost if you'd been out of stock, and that customer would go. And not every single product in your supply chain needs the 1 hour delivery or even 2-day.
No.
I think, and that's the other thing I think companies need to do, is really assess for a given product, what does the A/B test say? What's the conversion rate lift that you get if you can get it to 1 day, 1 hour, 2-day, 7-day, or maybe customers just want the product and aren't that time sensitive. There's no generic advice for that. I think it's really industry specific, category, and even SKU level specific.
Yeah, Ryan, I want to ask you too, because you get me thinking when you talk like that, you get me thinking that there could be a world where, at least for certain types of SKUs, you're almost never out of stock, because you could, take the regional network, like you say, if you've got things well positioned, you could pull from that. Depending on if you're out of one place, you could get it from another place, or you could even go overseas and go direct. But what you need is the user interface that tells the customer, like, yeah, here are your options, but the trade-offs are going to be how quickly do you get it. And for some SKUs, people are probably willing to wait if they really want that SKU. Am I thinking about that evolution the right way? Because it's been something I've been thinking a lot about lately.
That's exactly what we're building, and connecting it to the order management system that Flexport has, where you place orders to your factories, is the key for this. Because then you can know, and you have to build the big piece of tech that we're building is the ledger. So you can actually you have to make sure you don't sell the same product twice, right? To two different customers. But you place that order, and then yes, we also want to make it configurable so that, and potentially probably customer facing here too, where you can go, okay, actually I do want to, once this thing is ready, let's say it's under production at the factory.
Right.
You might want to expedite that. So instead of putting it in the ocean container with everything else, we put it in a parcel straight from Asia, or straight from wherever the factory is, all the way to the customer's door. And we offer that service too already. where we do manifest clearance de minimis, sort of under the $800 de minimis.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I've been thinking about. Yep.
Where it's an air freight plus customs plus final mile delivery product. So we'll see. I mean, there's a lot to tie together, a lot of different underlying technology systems and business processes within a company that we acquired in our existing core business. But that's one of the big priorities for us over the next 24 months, really next 12 months into 2025, is to launch that.
Yeah, it's so cool too, because it's almost like, giving that visibility to the consumers that you've never been able to do before. And now when I'm buying a table overseas, like, to be able to say, like, okay, we can put it in production now, you wait 6 weeks and it's, X number of dollars, or we expedite this, if I'm understanding this correctly. And now I have the power as the consumer to kind of make that decision and kind of pay for the speed that I need, and really having that visibility that I've.
And Flexport customers have been doing this for years before the Shopify acquisition, because we provide the best visibility data. Where is my stuff? When is it going to arrive on the inbound ordering of freight? And people, well-run e-commerce companies are tightly managing that and go, okay, let me update my ships by date. But they're doing it by hand, or some cases they use the API, but kind of jerry-rig it. We're trying to really productize that and make it something that's default. If you use Flexport's omnichannel services and you use our order management service, you get this out of the box.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really fascinating to think about, like, particularly for the e-commerce orders or the e-commerce categories, I should say, where delivery speed isn't that important. Do we start to see, things go direct from factory even more so today than the standard retailer would otherwise entertain? It's really interesting to think about. I love how you said that, Ryan. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about resiliency. We're coming out of the pandemic. Of course, we had the pandemic itself, but for the last few years, we've seen things like port strikes, canal closures. How do you think supply chains are going to become more resilient?
I'm not sure they are.
Okay. All right. I love the honesty, the blunt honesty. It's great.
I do think that tech can help understand what's happening and make you more agile to respond to the.
Right. But if there's a war, there's a war. That's what you're saying.
It seems like it. I mean, it does seem like I can't predict that there will be less chaos. In fact, there may be more.
There may be more, right?
There may be more. We need to plan for that world. But I do think that technology like what we offer, where you're able to see what's happening in real time and respond to it and take action and make changes, is got to be key. And in some sense, that is a form of resiliency. Like, you can adapt quickly to change. But I wouldn't expect that there will be less change in the world, or that underlying the infrastructure is better and more resilient or something like that. So it depends how we're discussing. I think brands can be more resilient and adaptable to change, even as the supply chains, I would think just this morning we saw that the Kansas City Southern Railroad workers have given 72 hours strike notice. And the East Coast Port Union is likely to go on strike. Canada railroads have been having all kinds of strike issues. So I'm not the ports, the Suez. I have no prediction about when we'll be able to transit the Suez again. But we've seen even, with, for example, the Red Sea, when the Houthis started shooting missiles, we knew right away, they're going to shut down the Suez. In fact, we had started planning for this eventuality once October 7th hit in Israel, that, hey, it's likely that something happens in the Suez Canal if there's tensions in the region. We saw that and because there's precedent in 1967,
right?
Suez was shut for 7 or 8 years, where you couldn't go through the Suez Canal. And so what we're able to do then is prepare so that on the core of the user experience of Flexport is the single pane of glass, where you can see all your shipments in motion, and then get SKU level visibility of what everything, which products are on which ships and on which containers and airplanes. And so that we knew we needed to be resilient, that if the Suez gets shut off here, we've got to be able to show customers which specific products are going to be delayed and by how much. Mm-hmm. And it did. I'm not saying we fully anticipated it. Once they started rerouting, it was like on a Thursday or a Friday, and we had to spend core engineering team at Flexport had to spend the whole nights and weekends working all weekend to make sure that by Monday we were able to display on the map, here's every ship that's been rerouted, every product, make it customer facing. So when you logged in, we were turning your products orange if they were going to be delayed because of this. And then that allows these companies, look, I can't solve it for you. I can't get there faster, but they know exactly which products and purchase orders are delayed and are able to communicate downstream to retailers and other customers, hey, this thing's going to be late. And in that case, almost everybody understood. It's like, yeah, there's like a war going on. But that is where tech can really play a big role, right? Is like getting you better understanding of what's happening so you can communicate about it. Even if it's out of your control, you can communicate about it. And that's half the battle often in logistics.
Yeah, you can see it. It's communication flow, really. And I love when our guests are like kind of like us, where they tell it like it is, like how many people would we ask that question? They'd be like, nothing. It's not, there's no impact. It's going to be the same. The world's going to be the same. That's not going to change. Most of the time people would pontificate or give us some BS, but not Ryan. I love that, Ryan. Respect, full.
Well, Ryan, one of the things that leads to resilience that we've been talking about is flexibility. How do you think that supply chains will become kind of more flexible in general, regardless of the things that we just talked about, wars or pandemics or port shutdowns, things outside of our control?
Yeah, well, I think it's about giving people more options. One of the things that's so fascinating about Flexport is that we serve such a huge range of industries, and there's definitely no one size fits all solutions. And frankly, value props, like if I have like 12 different value props that Flexport could deliver for you, but unlikely we deliver all 12. We can be either the cheapest or the fastest, but not both. Or you can have green options. You can have more flexible routing. You can have, there's a lot of different things that you can do. It could be the most customer centric or the most automated. And these might be the same thing, or they might actually be opposed. And so I think the flexibility is to understand what your customer needs. I don't believe that you get rid of people for this reason, because I think people are really good at building the relationship to get the trust from the customer, to understand what are the problems that specific company has, and how do you make supply chain tech like Flexport's an enabler and not a blocker like we've had for the last 5 years since COVID. Sure. And even before that with the tariffs that were hitting, constant changes in regs. So having great people are much more flexible than tech. In general, this is the reason that iPhone is still made by hand instead of by robots, because if they change the design within an hour, they can retrain all the people. At tech, you'd have to retool every machine, and it takes a long time. So people are really key for flexibility. But tech is really good for cost, for automation, for removing manual work that people aren't that good at. So that's how we see the two, is like tech can really help a lot, but you've got to have people that know how to use the tech, know how to configure it, know how to adapt it to the customer's needs. Very specifically, we want to have the best database in the world of all of the sailing schedules for every ship. When are they going to arrive? When are they going to depart? Every single port in the journey. Really understand the full transit time so you can be more predictable. But then that allows you to be flexible, because you can say, actually, this other ship will get you there at the same time for lower cost or lower carbon emissions or some other target that you may have. You can create more options about, actually, the carrier that you signed your contract with can't hit your target date. This other one can, or I need to divert this and move air freight because these SKUs really matter and these other ones, we'll leave them behind and go on the slower boat. So getting the people the flexibility within their supply chain to be very adaptable. There's a million ways that you can do it.
How do you think that flexibility is changing the like Flexport's flexibility is changing the supply chain industry in general, Ryan? Because it seems like, you're giving retailers so much more visibility into what's going on and the ability to kind of make decisions in real time that they haven't probably been able to do before when they have these contracts in place with carriers. I mean, what do you think Flexport's impact has been?
Yes, it is that. I mean, I think that is where the flex and Flexport comes from. It's either that or flex your muscles, whatever sounds better.
Whatever you're feeling today.
Whatever you're feeling today. Yeah.
And yeah, we give people more options. I think a lot of times there's this impression that we're this tech company. We have 400 software engineers building the technology. It gets better every day, mostly better every day. Sometimes we make it worse for a day or two and have to get it and fix it. But gets
more
better.
Truth.
We're constantly updating.
Yeah,
things.
completely candid.
We're constantly making improvements to the technology, but it doesn't replace the people, as I said before. And people want to have someone you can pick up the phone and solve a problem. And that's a big part of our org structure and business model, is that we each client gets a set of team members that are actually doing the operations on their behalf, and they talk directly to the operators, solve problems, configure things, create the flexibility that the customer needs. And that could be a million little tactical details, like how do you schedule appointments at this warehouse, or pass the ASN, advanced ship notice, which has the inventory of what's inbound to the warehouse. Do you want that? When do you want the warehouse to receive that? People care about this for some reason. They want it to, a week before, 2 weeks before. I mean, there's a million ways that you could configure this. Or when it comes to signing carrier contracts, so larger, once you ship about 5,000 containers a year, you're going to generally get better economics as if you sign directly with an ocean carrier, rather than buying your freight through a forwarder like Flexport. But you still need someone to actually place those bookings. So when the goods are ready, place a booking to which sailing does it go on of that carrier, and giving them optionality, being able to show them, okay, here are the choices, and run that program for them. And then you'll want to sign 2 or 3 contracts at least, sort of load balance your contracts, then becomes an important problem. And so giving people data to know, okay, you don't want to ship everything on the one and then find out, oops, I didn't honor this other contract. And so allowing them to see in a given week, how much allocation do they have on which contracts, and then make sure that they can do their part in fulfilling those contracts and getting accurate data about the performance of the carriers. Did they honor the contract? Did they rolling the cargo is what we call getting bumped. If getting bumped in a passenger context on an airline. So if your cargo doesn't get loaded, you signed a contract, you want to be able to present that data to the carriers the next time you're going to sign contracts and going, hey, here's your performance. That data is largely not out there. And so putting this into people's hands so they can make better decisions is a big part of it.
Like, I want my free ticket for getting bumped. That's what you're saying. Like that's
not how it works in ocean freight, but you can look across, statistics and go, hey, you rolled me 18% of the time. The industry average is 8%. Let's talk about it next year when we sign a new contract.
Makes my negotiation a little more powerful. Interesting. All right, so let's close on this then. I think you may have touched on this a little bit, and the theme I'm getting here from this whole conversation is really, the visibility and the transparency is really what's going to enable the supply chain to continue to evolve in the future. But I want to key in on reliability, because we hear so much, particularly on the omnichannel side of things, in terms of, making sure product arrives when customers expect it to arrive. For example, Best Buy just last week is now giving like daily to-the-minute updates of where their trucks are as they're heading out to customers' houses. But also on the shelf. Like, that's the point that we hear all the time from the retailers that have stores, which is, we have so much opportunity to sell more product if we can just get the product more reliably on the shelf. So what do you think is going to happen in the next few years to make reliability that much better, or will it get better at all?
Well, the analogy that I like to use, and we're not there as an industry at all, but the analogy that we should all be building towards is the utility grid. Like, if you flip a light switch, I should have put this on before. I hit that light switch back there. In real time, I just activated a power plant.
Right.
Like, it got a little hotter just for me to generate more electricity for me. And like, when you buy something on the store at Target, in real time, it should be sending the signal back to their production systems to go, hey, do you order one more unit at that moment? Or is that feeding into a predictive model for data science that it's actually already been ordered because you're able to predict these things? But ultimately, that supply and demand loop needs to be as good as it is for the utility grid. And it's nowhere near that right now. Right now, it's like a bunch of emails getting forwarded and phone calls and duct tape and PDF attachments, right? And but that's what we're building towards, is that retailer can send a signal. We're there with 2 of our retail channel. Our omnichannel business does B2B distribution to 50 different retailers.
Okay.
I think it's only 2 so far that can feed back to us real-time data of inventory status. Okay. And then that lets us auto replenish and make sure, and those are Amazon and Walmart, FBA and WFS specifically.
And the category of product matters too in this conversation as well, right? For the most part.
Say more.
So like, this probably works more for like household commodities or things of that nature than it does an apparel SKU, but maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, I think it's always a statistical model that you're feeding back into. It's not that just because you sold one, you want to buy one more. Like, just because you bought that nice painting behind yourself doesn't mean you immediately order another one.
So it could work for any category then, just as long as you have the modeling right.
I think it's about statistical modeling. And
okay, cool.
That's one more data signal for the data scientists to figure out and build the predictive models for how much to reorder and when. But yeah, so we're able to do that now with auto replenishment into FBA and Walmart fulfillment center because their APIs feed back inventory status data. So the merchant just needs to approve sharing that with Flexport, so our data science can do their work.
Wow.
But I would expect that most retailers will get there and build the data governance models to enable the sharing of that. So you say, hey, this merchant wants to share their data. Are they allowed to or not? And is it their data to share or not? But it probably take time, and there might be some that are actually more advanced than I don't know about. We haven't integrated with. I'm not saying Amazon and Walmart are the best. That's just where Flexport's capabilities extend today.
Right, but working to the limits with those two retailers in particular, and really pressure testing, just like you did all the way back. I'm sure. Like, I'm still so surprised, Ryan, that your first endeavor was like shipping the largest, heaviest, most complex things to people with your early e-commerce businesses, and now what you've created with Flexport is really pushing the limits of kind of where the future of the supply chain is headed, and all of the intricacies that retailers will need to be paying very close attention to as that supply chain evolves. Ryan, I'm sure there's going to be a million people who were listening here that want to reach out to you. They want to find out how Flexport might work for their own businesses. What's the best way for them to kind of start that conversation with you?
Oh, it's so easy. You can go to flexport.com and just hit sign up and just go ahead and sign up.
That's it.
If let's say you're a retailer signing up for our e-commerce services, if you just make sure you put that you do at least 60 daily orders.
Okay.
That's just your hack to getting through our sign up flow. Our Flexport rep will call you immediately.
Cheat code. Yeah, perfect.
But regardless, you can drop straight into the sign up and start using the products right online. Wow. That's for our omni-channel business. Forwarding will also reach out to you. The omni-channel business is what we acquired from Shopify Logistics. Freight forwarding is our legacy Flexport platform that we've been building for over a decade. We're working very hard right now to bring these two businesses together. Where 1 + 1 = 3, but I'd love to talk to you. So signing up on the website, you want to talk to me directly. Twitter is probably the easiest. My handle is types fast. Types
fast. Okay, good to know.
I do use LinkedIn, but I've got like 5,000 unread messages on LinkedIn, so I can't promise that I will respond on LinkedIn. It's a lot. I get so much inbound on there that it's a lot of spam and stuff. So, but Twitter, I'm a lot more responsive. So love to hear from everybody.
Amazing.
Right, do you get into chats and stuff with people too, Ryan?
Yeah.
Like, do you get into
on LinkedIn?
On Twitter? On Twitter, are you like getting into conversations with people?
Trying to stay focused on work, but if it's a little bit.
Oh my God. Ryan Petersen, the most candid guest we've had and one of our favorites now on Omni Talk. Thank you so much, Ryan Petersen, CEO of Flexport, for sitting down with all of us today. All of you who joined us live on LinkedIn, and for those of you who are listening afterward. And as always, on behalf of all of us here at Omni Talk, be careful out there.